This computer. Okay, now recording. Hare Krishna. Recording in progress. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
Krishna. So welcome everyone to our reading. Yeah, it's a reading of Sankalpa Kaumudi, and we are on page 106. Yeah. The chapter is entitled Definition of Sadhana. Yeah. And I was just reading through this chapter just before we started. It's very interesting, very exciting, especially the next chapter as well. But I thought I'd begin with a little summary, just a small summary of what we've touched on so far in this chapter. So here we're given, well, as it says, there's a definition of sadhana, and specifically its relationship to the goal. So the word for goal, which you're going to hear a lot in Sankalpa Kaumudi, is sadhya. So what is the relationship between the practice and the goal? Yeah. That's a precursor before defining sadhana. Yeah. So every practice here, sadhya, or every perfection, sorry, has its sadhana. And this here is from Sanatana Goswami. Yeah. So the sadhya, if you want a specific perfection, you have to do a certain type of sadhana. I think, yeah, Marge gives the example here. If someone wants to be a doctor, then they go to a medical school, not an engineering school, right? That's obvious. Yeah. Now, this is brought up because perfections of lots of people coming in, because devotional perfections are variegated. So one particular sadhana doesn't give you an option for every type of devotional attainment. Yeah. So in other words, there's a different sadhana. If anyone wants to go to Vaikuntha, there's a certain sadhana. If you want to go to Dwarka, there's a certain sadhana. Yeah. So that's why Maharaj is encouraging us to study Srila Prabhupada's books so we can understand which sadhana we should, or which sadhana leads to which specific sadhya. Okay, so this is just a summary if you're just joining us before we start reading. We're beginning page 106, so we're just having it for my benefit and everyone else's benefit as well. So it's good to get the context of where we are. Okay, so so here's a question. But isn't just by following the ninefold path, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Ajanam, Bandhanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam, isn't that enough to go back to Godhead? Yes. These activities in their perfection ensure that one goes back to Godhead. But going back to Godhead is a general term. Yeah, it can mean many things. It can mean going to Ayodhya, going to Purushottam Setra, etc. Yeah. So, for example, what a type of sadhana for someone who's aspiring to be a servant of Ram, they will often go on pilgrimage to Ayodhya. And for someone who is desiring to serve the queens of Dwarka, they will often be going on pilgrimage there. You have to stay there for extended time, maybe not. Yeah. So now, specific sadhana to achieve Krishna, as opposed to Vaikuntha, is mentioned here in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'll just read this quickly. Everywhere in the world, people worship me according to scriptural functions. But simply by following such regulative principles, one cannot attain the loving sentiment of the devotees in Brajbhumi. Knowing my opulences, the whole world looks upon me with awe and veneration, but devotion made feeble by such reverence does not attract me. By performing such regulated service and awe and veneration, one may go to Vaikuntha and attain all kinds of liberation. So Krishnadas Kaviraj here is explaining the distinction between different types of sadhana and the goal. That's meant, yeah. And so this is more or less saying the same thing. I won't read the whole quote. Okay, I've been tempted to read it. The process of Vaidhi Marg, following the regular principles, is utilized in the worship of Lakshmi Narayan, whereas the process of spontaneous service, following the footsteps of the gopis, who are the denizens of Vrindavan, is transcendently more advanced and is the process where, by Radha and Krishna are worshipped, one cannot attain this elevated position by worshipping the Lord in opulence. Those attracted by the conjugal love between Radha and Krishna must follow in the footsteps of the gopis. Only then it is possible to enter into the Lord's service in Goloka Vrindavan, directly associated with Radha Krishna. So Maharaj is just bringing up these quotes just to show very clearly that what's being asked of in these different perfections is a different type of sadhana. Yeah? And then this will be explained in the chapters as well, the actual sadhana for attaining Radha Krishna. Okay. And we have this verse, Anapita Chiram Chirit Kuruna Avatirna Kalo. So this is in Vidagda Madhava of Rupa Goswami. May the Supreme Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Sachadevi, be transcendently situated in the inmost cause of your heart. Resplendent blue radiance of molten gold, he has descended in this age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow what no other incarnation ever offered before, was elevated mellow of devotional service to mellow of conjugal love. Yeah. Okay, so now we going to now, having made that introduction about the different type of understanding the sadhya and then practicing the respective sadhana, Maharaj will now define what is sadhana actually. Okay, so this is where we are, page 106. If you have the textbook, as they say, textbook, the book there, it's on page 106. And anyone who has the book there, they can raise your hand and we can start reading. And first place is Sahachari. We heard that first. Well done, Hare Krishna. Okay, I think we're just reading a couple of pieces, no? And then we're gonna report. Okay, go ahead, Sahachari, mother.
Okay. Up to this point, Sankalpa Kaumudi has spoken of sadhana as the means to perfection, but it has not fully defined or studied what devotional service and practice actually is and how it works. With the aim of giving insight into the essential features of sadhana bhakti and bhava bhakti, we shall now attempt to do so. Our hope is that this insight will both assist and inspire devotees on their path to loving devotion. In his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami defines sadhana in terms of its sadhya with the verse below. It is helpful, no, essential for devotees to memorize the verse and to assimilate its meaning. To assist in our analysis, we also give the word for word meaning. The great saint writes, when transcendental devotional service by which love for Krishna is attained is executed by the senses, it is called sadhana bhakti, or the regulative discharge of devotional service. Such devotion externally exists within the heart of every living entity. The awakening of this eternal devotion is the potentiality of devotional service and practice. In other words, sadhana comprises devotional activities like Nama Sankirtan, which when dutifully undertaken by an immature devotee, eventually awakens in him spontaneous ecstatic devotion, love. In this regard, processes like chanting Hare Krishna are the primary attributes of devotional service. Swarupa Lakshana and the awakening of pure love for Krishna, the marginal attribute or the Tatastha Lakshana. These two characteristics of a thing, natural and marginal, will be discussed in detail in a later chapter. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu affirms these primary and secondary characteristics of sadhana. The spiritual activities of hearing, chanting, remembering, and so forth are the natural characteristics of devotional service. The marginal characteristics is that it awakens pure love for Krishna. Since a proper understanding of the definition of sadhana is essential, if one is to successfully undertake it, we shall study its components and overall meaning. We begin by answering the question, what is bhakti? The phrase Nitya Siddhasya Bhava indicate that devotion is an eternally perfect potency of Krishna, an aspect of his internal energy, Swarupa Shakti. The transcendental bhakti is not brought about by activities of mind, body, or senses, but continually exists as a divine potency that impels advanced devotees and eternal associates to express their love for Krishna in physical, mental, and vocal ways. In this regard, Sanatana Goswami writes, you should not consider devotional service merely an activity of the body, senses, and mind. It is in fact the eternal absolute reality manifesting itself as the most intense ecstasy beyond the material modes. This transcendental nature of bhakti is also confirmed in the famous Srimad Bhagavatam verse, which states that devotional service is ahaituki. It has no material cause. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self.
Okay, perhaps we pause there.
Everything that Krishna's associate in
Hare Krishna. If we pause there, we would have a pause for thought. We clear what's being said here, or any reflections or confusions or questions?
Yes, I'm confused about this primary and secondary. That doesn't seem to work. I don't seem to understand.
Primary and secondary, yeah. Tatastha Lakshana and Sarup Lakshana. Yeah, this is a common definition. It's also it's defined in detail as well in the verse Nyabhalasta Sanyam Gana Kaumudi Anuritam Anukulina Krishna Silinam Bhakti Uttama. You know, the main verse of the Nectar of Devotion.
Yes.
Then there is a primary quality and there is a secondary as well. And you can, yeah, and it's often used. So here it's surprising in one sense. I don't know if you're indicating or you're referring to this, but the primary practice of a bhakta is Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. That's the prime. Now from that is the means to awaken love. So it's love here is the tatashta, but it doesn't mean it's less. It's just a way of categorizing things. So the practice, you've got the main practice that you do. Yeah, that's the sarup. That's the main intrinsic practice. And then from that will come love. Yeah, so you've got the sarup and the tatashta. Is that
so the secondary is love comes, that's the secondary.
Yeah, because
and
it's
the primary.
Yeah, because it's the result of the sarup lakshana. It's the result of hearing and chanting.
Okay, thank you very much.
If done properly, according to what Maharaj describes here as sadhana. Yeah. Now there's another point here. I don't know if anyone picked it up when I was reading this before. It kind of struck me, and I remember reading it before. But if there's any questions or comments, I can bring it up. Unless there's any questions or comments, I can bring it up. But it's the awakening of bhakti cannot be done through any material. And that's why Maharaj quotes the verse, Ohitikiya Pritiyatma. You know, this was Savaipam Samparodamo. Yeah, the supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which man can render love and devotion. So such service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted. So our senses are material. So how is it that that which is material can then invoke bhava and then prema? So without giving the game away, Marge will expand in the next few pages, but I can't but help resist to give the game a little away a bit. It's that the senses themselves, they're, as I said, they are material. So it's not just a mechanical activity that we are doing with our senses that will invoke love. Yeah, there has to be shraddha there. There has to be faith. If I remember correctly, what Marge is explaining. Yeah. So Marge brings up the point that just like one activity is mandir majinado, is cleaning the temple room floor or cleaning the temple. So there's plenty of people cleaning floors throughout London and stairs, but it's not going to lead to ultimately to ecstatic devotion. So that, do you understand? So that in of itself, just engaging your senses for the sake of engaging your senses is not the ingredient that actually causes bhava or causes love. Now I'll leave you on a cliffhanger there because Marge will explain a bit more about that. Is that kind of clear? Kind of where we're going? Or yeah, I was reading through this earlier, as I say, and it's like it's blissfully very technical. And you have to really, you can't read it. I mean, you can't read this book like the Srimad Bhagavatam. So you cannot just, you have to study it. You have to kind of really try and understand why one point is leading to the next. And as you do that, it's quite ecstatic. All right. Before I get too carried away, let's have some more readers. Yeah. Again, if you've got any questions, anything comes up, please follow.
Can I see the previous slide, please?
You can see the previous slide.
Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah, this is Madhya Lila.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, the marginal characteristic is that it awakens pure love of Krishna. Okay, let's read, see if we can get a better understanding of this. So I see Chandravali's hand is up, and then after that, Vamsivat can read, his hand is up. Okay, I've lost where we are now. There we are, yeah. Page 108, yeah, at the bottom. Everything that Krishna's associates in Vaikuntha, yeah.
Everything that Krishna's associates in Vaikuntha and Goloka do, say, think, feel, and so on, is brought about by and consists of pure devotion. In the mind of a conditioned soul, the activities of liberated may resemble the activities of devotees. The cause and substance of those acts is pure transcendence. And we shall see 57, the act that a sadhaka performs through his senses are also bhakti, different from nitya siddha sadhaka. It is like a shadow of the same. Eternally perfect bhakti is performed with love, while practice bhakti cultivates attachment in order to attain love. It is one potency, bhakti, which manifests in two ways, as practice and as perfection.
Yeah, just jump in there. So did you catch that?
Yes.
It's
well,
like sometimes the example is given of sometimes a question is asked, but but when we bring up about the shadow and reflection, so that means we're not doing bhakti now. Yeah, we are doing bhakti. Yeah, it is a potency. Yeah, but what's the example that Prabhupada sometimes gives that we've heard? I give you a clue. It's to do with a fruit. One can make pickle, one can make milkshake.
The ripe mango and the unripe mango.
Yeah, so it's a mango. So the bhakti that we're performing is we're doing it to attain love, and the bhakti that the perfected souls is a manifestation of love, but it's one potency, which is bhakti, which is manifest in two ways. So sadhana bhakti is completely spiritual in one sense. Okay, sorry, Chandravali, carry on.
The following statement by Sri Prabodha in Srimad Bhagavatam is an important affirmation of this truth. The devotee of the Lord constantly discuss the glories of the personality of Godhead among themselves. Thus, they constantly remember the Lord and remind one another of his qualities and pastimes. In this way, by their devotion to the principles of Bhakti Yoga, the devotees please the personality of Godhead, who takes away from them everything inauspicious. Being purified of all impediments, the devotees awaken to pure love of Godhead, and thus even within this world, their spiritualized body exhibits symptoms of transcendental ecstasy, such as standing of the bodily hair on end. Thus, devotion in practice is the cause of devotion in perfection, in conformity with a axiom.
Yeah, I don't know.
Axiom.
Yeah.
Axiom. Pure love is primarily a mixture of two potencies, cognizance, samved, and pleasure, ladini. We use the word primarily because the existence potency, sandhini shakti, is also an aspect of prema. Otherwise, it could not exist. But the main potency that characterize love are knowledge and pleasure. These two energies arise from Krishna's Swarup Shakti, also known as Sudasattva. Appendix 2 gives a brief overview of the potencies of the Lord, their divisions, and how all these are named. The reader will find reading it helpful in understanding the potencies mentioned throughout this book.
Okay, perhaps we'll pause there. Do we want to go to that appendix? It's only 2 pages.
Yeah.
Nay. The nodding head. Vamsivat's nodding his head.
Because he said it will make us
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, it's only 2 pages. So those of you who have the book, it's on page 885. You can read through that.
Better put some marker. 885. Okay.
885. Perhaps Vamsivat, you could read through these pages. You might pause in between to make sure we're all on track and we haven't fallen off the track.
Okay. Review of Krishna's potencies.
Right, your voice is very good there. Really good.
This appendix is a brief review of Krishna's potencies as they relate to the development of bhava. While many of these terms are defined in the book, their interrelationship and hierarchy may not be readily perceivable. For the sake of clarity, we offer this short summary. Both Shruti and Smriti scriptures describe Krishna as the master of unlimited potencies, a truth the great authority Brahma confirms in this statement. Tamadirantu bhuvanasya madhyam ananta shaktim purusham yam ahu. Kalo bhavan akshi patisha vishvam shruto yatanta patitam gabiram. O my Lord, you are the beginning, the manifestation, and the ultimate dissolution of the three worlds, and you are celebrated in the Vedas as the reservoir of unlimited potencies, the Supreme Person. O my Lord, as waves attract branches and leaves that have fallen into deep water, you, the Supreme Eternal Time Factor, attract everything in this universe. The totality of these unlimited potencies, Ananta Shakti, is grouped under the common name internal potency, which is also called Chit Shakti, Swarup Shakti, Antaranga Shakti, or Vishuddha Sattva. In short, these names indicate the Lord's total spiritual power, which is unlimited and eternal. In order to manifest a variety of states and to realize that the completeness of the Absolute Truth must display existences eternal and temporary, unlimited and limited, the Swarup Shakti acts temporarily as the material energy called Maya Shakti, and limitedly as living entities, the Jivas, also known as the Tatashta Shakti or marginal potency. Although the living entity is also spiritual, he is very minute, an infinitesimal particle of Swarup Shakti called Chitkana. If not under the shelter of the spiritual potency, the Jiva identifies with the temporary Maya Shakti and in that unconstitutional state suffers. The Swarup Shakti has three primary subdivisions which combine in many ways to achieve the Lord's purposes. Kaviraj Goswami says, Ladini is its aspect of bliss, Sandhini of eternal existence, and Samvit of cognizance, which is also accepted as knowledge. A brief review of the constituents of these three potencies and their effects on Krishna and his devotees is instructive. The essence of Ladini is love of Krishna. The essence of love is emotion, bhava, which is different from the stages of bhava, and the ultimate expression of emotion is Mahabhav. The Ladini Shakti gives pleasure to Krishna and his eternal associates, and its material aspect gives happiness to conditioned souls. Jiva Goswami thus says that it is the foremost of all energies, since it is the purposeful essence of the combined transformations of the Swarup Shakti. The essential portion of the Sandhini potency is also known as Shuddha Sattva, the name by which the Swarup Shakti is known. It is Krishna's existence potency, and thus he and all other things, spiritual and material, directly or indirectly rest upon it. The essence of the Samvit potency is knowledge of Krishna's unequaled supremacy, of which all other departments of knowledge are but subsidiary components. The different branches of material knowledge are products of Samvit's shadow. Of the combinations of these potencies, the most wonderful is a unique blend of the Samvit and Ladini energies that resides in Krishna's eternal associates, inspires them to constantly please the Lord, and is the foundation of their Shuddha Sattva existence. It is a ray of the same Shuddha Sattva, comprised of Ladini and Samvit, that first manifests in the heart of the accomplished practitioner as bhava. Rupa Goswami described this event and its effects in this verse now well known to the reader. Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma Prema Suryamshu Samyavat Ruchibis Chitta Mashrinya Kridaso Bhava Uchyate. That part of bhakti is called bhava, whose essence is Samvit and Ladini Shakti, which is one ray of the sun of prema, which will soon rise in the heart, and which softens the heart, which desires to meet, serve, and exchange love with the Lord. As the sadhaka continues with the devotional activities like chanting and hearing, activities saturated with and a consequence of bhava, ecstasy matures and deepens, and in time enters the realm of full-fledged prema. In this way, the divine energies of Krishna work to reawaken in conditioned souls their long-forgotten love and devotion for Krishna.
Okay, thank you. Vamsi Prabhu. Hare Krishna. So any reflection, Vamsi Prabhu, upon reading that? Or you can help us to give a little summary.
Uh, uh,
Well, the whole thing is a summary.
yeah.
Anyway, something that struck you, something, a reflection.
So basically, I'm just wondering if I'm understanding it correctly because it's so technical. So we know that bhakti is always transcendental, even in practice and in perfection.
Yeah, that's what
So,
we ascertained.
yeah. So Maharaj has explained here how in perfection these three potencies, Ladini, Samvit, and Sandini, but primarily Samvit and Ladini, they're kind of working together to bring about the devotional exchanges between Krishna and his devotees, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. And then Maharaj is saying here that these divine, right at the end, these divine energies of Krishna work to reawaken in conditioned souls the long forgotten love and devotion for Krishna. So does that mean that this very same, when you're practicing bhakti in practice, is the unripe fruit, right? The unripe mango.
Yeah.
So even at that stage, in our stage, those spiritual potencies of Krishna are acting upon us and purifying us. Ladini, Samvit, and Sandini.
Yeah, but they're acting to propel us forward.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as Frank Maharaj said here, that's why he's defining sadhana, or he's defining bhakti first, and he's given a definition that is completely spiritual, but it manifests in two ways: as practice and as perfection. So I think I sometimes describe it as like we feel, perhaps every now and again we feel some ecstasy. I hope we all experience that in devotional service. We feel very happy while we're chopping potatoes or whatever we're doing in the floor distributing books. Sometimes we feel very ecstatic, you know. So that's a shadow of, say, bhava or ruchi. It's not actually the real thing as the eternal souls will experience. It's like a shadow. So we're experiencing, like we experience that. This is that it tends to come and go. So in that sense, it's like, you know, that wonderful example Prabhupada gives, like the mango, the unripe mango and the mango and the ripe mango. Yeah. Does that help? Is that
Yeah, so basically it's that because bhakti is completely spiritual, those potencies are acting upon us, but we're not completely purified yet.
Yeah.
And therefore, like I'm just picturing it as like not being completely purified means we still have our impurities covering us. So the experiences, the really nice experiences we're having, and not the completely spiritual, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it is still coming from the spiritual platform, but it's just a kind of shadow.
Yeah.
Because
yeah, that's right. And because like our devotional practice tends to be influenced by the three modes.
So the three modes are covering us. So the bhakti shakti is not fully penetrating, so to speak.
Yeah. And the reason why we're doing particular devotional activities may have a material motive, subtle or gross. So then the full potency of pure devotion cannot manifest. But yeah. But there was another point here which I found interesting, is that I think we've heard it before, but the way it's described, that the just feeling someone who experiences, say, love in this world, quote unquote, is actually a reflection of the Hladini and Samvit, which is there in the spiritual world between Radha and Krishna. Yeah, so a young boy and a young girl, they're, you know, head over heels in love. That's because that happens because it happens there. So today, actually, Prabhupada's lecture in the morning class, Prabhupada was, and he's pointing out before, that the girl and boy meet, it's natural, because that's what's going on in the spiritual world. So the same potencies have their reflective nature here in this material world. Yeah, as we described, we have Maya Shakti. Yeah, so the Shrup Shakti acts temporarily as the material energy. So it's acting under everything's under the internal energy, but it acts in a different category in this material world, in this temporary world. So anyway, that just kind of caught my attention. Any other
Can I ask
questions?
a question?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yeah, just about. Try again.
Haribo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to
Hello.
ask a question because this, I find all this very complicated, you know, the
Me as
difference
well. Yeah.
and everything like that. I mean, can you attain prema without actually knowing the different way the different energies work? I mean, is it possible? I mean, I know we should know what the energies are and how they're working. It does give you some direction.
Yeah, I think we touched on this before. Perhaps I'll open that out as a question. This is very detailed here.
Without
we have-
understanding it.
Sorry?
Without understanding it fully, would that be
An
an obstacle?
impediment. Would that be an impediment or would that be an obstacle?
Yeah.
So everyone's clear with Mother Lavanga's question? Once you've got something said. Yeah.
I don't think we need to know all this unless we are, we want to find out exactly where we are. Because my aunt, she became a widow at the age of 12, and she had to remain until the age of 102. She was a widow, and she spent all her life chanting Hare Krishna, not Hare Krishna. It was Jai Sri Krishna and Dwarkadish, of course. But she didn't know all this, this Shakti or that Shakti. All she knew is there's God, He is good and He's looking after me. And she used to go in the village, or anybody whose wife had died, he would look after their children. And once the man got married, she would move to another place. And she spent entire life like that. And at the end, towards the end, she was able to look towards the temple. And when she left her, when she was breathing the last, she actually moved her head towards the temple.
Yeah, so you're putting, you basically explained that, and she wasn't particularly
She was
in
completely illiterate. First of all, she was completely illiterate, never went to school.
Yeah, now there's a particular kind of thing coming to mind on that, but I'll just get back to you. I just wonder if anyone else could perhaps has any ideas on this. So Rajkishore is bringing up the point that she's basically saying it's not, from the example that she's seen, then it's not needed.
From what I've seen in my aunt, that's what I completely illiterate people, they don't know what is Samvit or yeah.
Can I say something, Murli?
Please, yeah.
The way I've understood this is that, like here, for example, we're hearing a lot of technical details, like ins and outs of how everything is working, how bhakti is working. There's that, and those who are like devotees who have this kind of nature, naturally they just get drawn to it. Oh yeah, they want to study and it makes sense to them and everything. But of course, at the same time, understand we need to like understand these things. So it's like then we can probably discuss what does understanding mean. To understand these things doesn't mean we become like a dictionary, that we know everything, definition of everything from A to Z. There's this conversation I heard from Prabhupada. He's talking to one devotee, and this devotee is asking him about, the different forms of Krishna, Ekatma Rupa, all the different categorizations, Chaturvyuha, blah, 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 Avesh and all that, all very confusing. He was asking Prabhupada these questions. It's very technical. And Prabhupada was like, well, you read our book and you know. And then Prabhupada makes the comment, he says, they think the teacher is going to know the dictionary by heart. So Prabhupada himself didn't know this, but he wouldn't at the top of his mind remember all these technical definitions by heart. He's saying that I'm a teacher, being teacher doesn't mean I have to know the dictionary by heart. If you want to know what's in the dictionary, you take the dictionary. You have it as a reference point. But then would you say that Prabhupada did not understand those technical things? He did. He understood the principle, the essence of it. So basically, when I always understand that when I'm going through these technical things, I like to try to understand it as much as I can. But ultimately, you get some picture of how things are working. What's the principle you're deriving from it? Ultimately, we're understanding through these different technical points that bhakti is transcendental. So basically, at the end of this, you have to become convinced that bhakti is entirely transcendental. It's all coming from the spiritual world like that. So we may not, depending on our nature, we may not be able to remember all of these technical details every day, but we're understanding the essence of it, and we're taking what we need from these pages and bringing it into our daily sadhana and daily practice and services.
Yeah, thank you, Vamsi Prabhu. I was going to just add that, yeah, I mean, what Vamsi Prabhu is saying is very good, and good question that Mother Raj Kishore's, Mother Lavanga Latika's brought up here, is that in essence, this book or this study that Maharaj has done is only about 5 subjects. Yeah. One is ekagrata, which means to be successful in devotion, we have to be attentive. Otherwise, we won't attain love. We have to be ekagrata. Also, he's also explaining bhava seva. We have to invest some feeling into our sadhana. It's not just by mechanically pronouncing the words. There has to be some bhav in this, not bhav in the stage of bhav, but some feeling. So ekagrata, bhava, and what other ones? Whatever topic, ekagrata.
Kripa.
Kripa, yeah, thank you. Yeah, ultimately, we have to understand that we are dependent upon kripa. So so understanding we're dependent upon kripa will cause us to take serious or to engage in ardent prayer. You know, not just engage in devotion in a mechanical way, but ultimately, for perfection, we are dependent upon kripa. So ekagrata, bhava seva, kripa. What other one is there?
Tad the bhava.
Huh?
Sankalpa. First one is
Sankalpa, yeah,
Sankalpa.
many books, yeah, Sankalpa Kaumudi. So like we have to be determined to achieve love of God, but we don't, it may not be that we have to photographically memorize every detail here. I think that's the point Vamsi was making. I'm bringing it out as well. It doesn't mean we have to, know all the details, but at least we should be educated in how to obtain success. How can our sadhana manifest into bhava? And that's why the example that Raj Kishore mentioned, it was reminding me of, that slide we have, the hawk that killed the pigeon. That slide, yeah. The hawk that killed the pigeon. I mean, sometimes bhakti, we will see, bhakti will manifest even in what seems the person who doesn't practice sadhana. The goal will manifest. Like the pigeon was chased around the temple by a hawk, and the hawk, killed the pigeon, and then the pigeon went back to Godhead. Hari Bol. And the story of Ajamil was there as well. He chanted the name Narayan. So these examples of the efficiency of bhakti doesn't mean we should deliberately be in ignorance of the process of bhakti. Yeah, you understand? So we should try as much as possible, and ultimately, everything that we read in Srimad Bhagavatam and all what we read is a lot of it. And for us, it may be Gyan, and by Krishna's grace, it becomes Vigyan. It becomes realized. So we're always dependent. We're always dependent on Krishna's grace and mercy. So I don't know if that I help Mother Fangalatika. These answers there. Yeah. So to whatever degree we can, and don't worry, we don't have to memorize every detail.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's certainly, I mean, it's just like if you read Prabhupada's purports, it should inspire you to do devotion.
Yeah.
It should inspire you to hear and chant, to preach.
Murli Prabhu, can I say something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, as you were saying, yeah, it's true. But the thing is that as we carry on doing our sadhana, and gradually, as you were saying, that that we do have a taste. So obviously, we do have a taste, and we just carry on doing it, and mercy will come, and we'll start feeling, I suppose, more for the bhava and later on prema.
Yeah, but it has to
What do
be
you say
like,
to that?
Oh, yeah, but we are the sadhakas, so there's an ongoing practice.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
Which is required of us to actually achieve the goal. And Rajkishore gave the example of her, was it grandmother?
Some auntie, I think.
My aunt, my mother's sister.
Yeah, but we have to be quite specific. That's what Marge is mentioning. We have so where do you want to go back to Godhead? Where are you aiming at? So that's going to take some focus for us. Okay, we want to go back to be with Krishna. That's where the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. That's where we're hopefully. That's our Param Gati. So that means we have to that means we have to hear about Krishna, just like we're reading the Nectar Devotion, reading about all the rasas and this. We're hearing about Krishna. So that's part of our sadhana for achieving the sadhya of the perfection of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So we have to be
attentively.
Yeah, we have to know what we're doing and where we're going, and we'll get there a lot quicker. If we don't know what we're doing or where we're going, it might take a lot longer. Anyway, Hare Krishna. Shall we read a bit more? Yes, a loud roar of yes come from Hare Krishna. Okay, there's no hands up there. Let's see who can put their hand up first. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Jai. Come on, Vamsivat, put his hand up. Go ahead, Vamsivat. Continue.
Where did we reach? I don't remember.
Yeah, we stopped there. It's page 109, and you can carry on with the last paragraph.
Oh yeah. Maya Devi also has both Samvit and Ladini potencies, which combine together to form material love. But these two energies are shadows of pure Samvit and Ladini. Attachment to Krishna in the heart of a practitioner is based on material goodness, which is not transcendental, but which contributes to the awakening prakatyam of pure love, bhava. The most significant stages of sadhana bhakti in which steady attachment begins to resemble love are ruchi, whereas devotees become attached to service, and ashakti, whereas devotees become increasingly attached to Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes the sadhaka's purification through practice to love as activities that arouse an inherent asset. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi, Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Koroye Udoy. Pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of the living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, this love naturally awakens. We'll continue with our analysis in the next section.
You can continue a couple more paragraphs. If you have some questions there, unless anyone has some comments. Any balls? Okay. Okay, I'll continue reading. As already discussed, devotional service in practice is of two kinds, regulated and spontaneous. Within the attraction that the sadhaka feels in sadhana is the seed of love, which has two components, divine attachment, rati, and ecstasy, bhava. When matured of the two kinds of attachment, reverential and spontaneous. Let me read that again, sorry. With the attraction that a sadhaka feels in sadhana is the seed of love, which has two components, divine attachment and ecstasy. When matured, of the two kinds of attachment, reverential and spontaneous, only the latter can bring Krishna fully under control. More will be said about it later. I've got to mute someone. I've got to. That's playing Space Invaders. And the person who's not muted. Okay. Okay, where was we? More will be said about this later. It is important to note that the transition from practice to ecstasy in which Rati is awakened takes place by divine intercession, the mercy of Krishna or his devotee. While sadhana bhakti purifies the heart of the practitioner, its final attainment requires an external bequest in the way that fire dormant in wood can be manifest only by fire from an external source. Referring once more to Srila Rupa Goswami's definition of sadhana in terms of sadhya, kriti sadhya, sadhya, we now look at those activities of the senses, kriti sadhya, that must be done, bhavet. All right, I've got to pause there. Any reflections or questions? Okay, let's better continue. Okay, let's have someone else read. You can read again, anyone that wants, anyone who's not read yet, please go ahead. Perhaps because you don't have.
I'll do it.
Yes,
the senses constitute the five sense organs like ears and tongues, with working senses like hands and feet, and finally, most importantly, the mind. We say most importantly because sadhana is most effective when the subtle mind is fully observed in the act of the gross sense. Indeed, the sense of sadhana is to observe the mind in the physical, observe physical acts of devotee performs for Krishna. The absence of such absorption, constitutes the kind of mechanical devotional in which the senses are active but the mind is absent.
Perhaps we'll just pause there. Perhaps we'll just pause there. But that's an important point. That is, we have to endeavor to be absorbed with thoughts. We have to endeavor to absorb the mind in our activities of bhakti. Say you're dressing Radha Krishna, or you're dressing. I was dressing Gaunitai this morning. I was trying my best to be absorbed. Yeah, as well. Trying my best. I wasn't completely successful. I was trying to be absorbed. So that's when we really, that's when the result really comes faster to that degree. It's just in chanting, isn't it? We have to be attentive while chanting. It's an offense not to be attentive. But anyway, because Maharaj makes a big point of this in latter chapters, is dedicated to the mind and the senses and how to absorb them in Krishna's service. Otherwise, it's just mechanical. Yeah, we're just externally we're doing things, but internally we are somewhere else. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, I just remember what you said, even Bhakti Churu Maharaj as well. When you're cooking, I remember him saying that you just observe yourself, just cook and just pray to Krishna that everything I'm doing it for you. So as you said, when we're dressing up the Gaunitai, the same way Maharaj was saying the same thing, that we observe. Okay, pure devotional entails favorable acts for Krishna. And since it is the mind that directs activities, when it does not perform that function, the acts can hardly be called favorable. In the mind distracts by thoughts of different from Krishna is the value of compromise, activities being discharged. That compromise is called inattentive, and the breeding ground for offensive devotional.
Okay, perhaps we'll pause there as well. Everyone,
Yeah.
someone could repeat back what we've been just saying there and simply explain that.
Inattentiveness is a breeding ground for offenses.
Yeah, in essence, you just read it, but yeah, so just keep that in mind. It's a breeding ground for offenses. And it's because like our devotional service should be favorable. Anukul, isn't it? Is that the right word for anukul? Is that, yeah, it should be anukul. So sometimes we give the example, isn't it, of what's an example of someone who was doing something pleasing to Krishna, but it wasn't favorable? I give you a clue. Yeah, that's got through you.
Can you say that again, Mulifu?
Yeah,
Please.
the question. Yeah, what's an example of someone who was pleasing Krishna, but what they was doing wasn't favorable? You get 10 points if you get the question.
Is that Mother Yashoda? No.
No, nearly.
Well, that's another example, I guess.
Yeah, but the other side of that example.
Pleasing to Krishna, but not favorable.
Yeah. Chanura
It must have been a
and
demon. Was it
Mustika.
Chanura and Mustika.
Mustika. Yeah, they were, Krishna likes a fight. Vira Ras, he likes a good fight. So they were fighting, trying to kill Krishna. That's pleasing to Krishna, but ultimately it was anukul. Ultimately it wasn't favorable. What's the word anukul? Did I get that right? Anukul means favorable or unfavorable?
Favorable.
Favorable. Yeah, it was not anukul. So, but it's made me think here because, you know, if we're not attentive, then we're doing the same type of devotion. In one sense, it's unfavorable. Okay, and mind will naturally go here, there, and everywhere, but we have to make an effort to bring it under control. And if we're really not making an effort, if we couldn't care less, if we're not chanting attentively, well, that's quite. I don't think can't imagine any devotee feels like that. But if we're not attentive, then it's not favorable for bhava. Yeah. It's not favorable for achieving. If it's not favorable for achieving bhava, it's definitely not favorable for achieving prema. So, like that much we can choose to do as a jiva. We can choose to be attentive or not. We should try really hard to be attentive. Anyway, sorry.
May I ask a question, please, Prabhu?
Yes, please.
So this inattention is the breeding ground for offensive devotion. So when we are working, then Prabhupada said you should always listen katha nityam bhagavata sevaya. So if we say for cooking for Krishna and we're listening to some katha, so is that wrong or is that right? I know we're not fully attentive, but we're trying to think of Krishna while we're cooking. So what's the right thing to do here?
Well, it depends on how expert you are. It's like someone who is like, you know, I've been driving for most of my life. Since I was 16 years old, I was driving cars. I won't explain what type of cars I was driving when I first began driving cars. but I didn't own the car. But anyway, put that aside. I've been driving most of my life, and so I don't have to think much. The first gear, second gear, third gear, clutch. I'm just kind of, and I can be chanting slokas, you know, I can be thinking of different things I'm doing today. It's just going automatically. So it's a case of develop. If you're cooking, and if you're just first time cooking and you're new and you're not so experienced, it's going to be difficult to try and meditate too much. You need to meditate on the salt, on the heat, on the rice, you know, and you need to be attentive, as that is an offering to Krishna. But as you get more expert, then you can probably be chanting the holy name, listening to classes, listening to pastimes, you know.
So we can chant the holy name while we're cooking.
Yeah, if it doesn't, you know, if the offering doesn't get burnt.
Okay. Because I get confused, you know, when they say inattentive chanting should be avoided. So I thought maybe if you could just listen bhajan or listen to lecture.
Yeah, that's kind of, but definitely your 16 rounds. You should that should. I mean, you shouldn't be doing
okay.
anything else. I mean, that's
Okay.
why, you know,
After the 16 is done, you can chant while you're cooking, unless, yeah.
yeah, we should chant all the time.
Okay, so it's not an offense to while you're driving, while you're cooking, anytime you can chant doing
You
anything.
can chant, but
Oh, okay.
16 rounds is sacred. I mean,
Okay.
that's why I have a bit of an issue when I sometimes see, I don't say anything mostly, but I see devotees, they're driving and they got a little clicker on there and they're chanting their rounds when they're driving. I mean, yeah, so no, there's 16 rounds we should take as sacred. You know, we shouldn't be cooking rice. We shouldn't be doing anything. We should be just chanting 16 rounds. We shouldn't be scrolling on a phone. We shouldn't be YouTubing. Just be chanting Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, but we should chant all the time. But it's a case of we become more expert, you know, we can chant, listen to classes and cook, you know, and get a nice offering comes as well. Hare Krishna. Oh, it's 7 o'clock just about. Yeah, it's 7 o'clock now. I thought we might finish this chapter, but there's no rush. We've got a couple of pages left. Hare Krishna. Any final question or comment? Otherwise we can, yeah, perhaps I do something which I mentioned last time. Anyone got any, can offer a little reflection on today's reading and discussion, which kind of was a bit of a wow for them?
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Well, just going through these technical points, although I don't fully grasp it, I got this kind of really, I'm like, wow, this process is really spiritual. Like,
Yeah.
because even though these technicalities really give me kind of understand how much of a science it is, and how much like you're really seeing proof from Shastra, like this process is like, it's not ordinary at all, and it's there to change our lives. So like next time I go chant my rounds or something or read, I'm going to be so like, wow, I'll be more grateful and more attentive to what I'll be doing in my Krishna consciousness.
Great, wonderful. Hare Krishna.
Well, hopefully, I don't know. Well, that's the point.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so thank you for that, Vamsi. But unless anyone's dying to contribute something similar, if not, okay, you shouldn't be dying anyway. We should be living. Okay, let's stop there. And tomorrow we continue with Sudha Bhakti Chintamani. Same time, yeah, from 6 to 7.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Holy
you very
Prabhu.
much.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, His Grace,
Hare
Holy Prabhu
Krishna.
ki jai. Thank you.
I've got to stop. I'm going to end the meeting, so we're all going to disappear all of a sudden. We'll all be back on our own in our own little bedrooms and front rooms in our own world. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.